also, how do we want it to be? So that's where we're going to go next, is what do we want? So we're going to do an exercise called Preferences, Traditions, and Requirements, PTR for short. I'm going to start with an example that is hopefully a very low pain threshold, because this can get tough when we talk about it, which we're going to. So what are the preferences, traditions, and requirements for pizza? For pizza. I mean this, pizza. Think about what are your preferences for pizza?
Hot.
Hot? Good.
Cheese.
Okay.
I like sauce.
Okay.
Accompanied with beer.
Accompanied
Here.
All right, so what are some traditions associated with pizza?
Chicago style, New York style, etc.
Okay. Yep, Chicago and New York for sure.
Top,
Parties. Okay.
topped with pepperoni, I think, is the most popular pizza.
Pepperoni, yeah. Okay. What are some requirements for pizza?
Crispy crust.
Okay. I think Chicago might argue on that, but you know.
Yeah.
Crust and toppings.
Crust and toppings.
Hot.
Hot, okay. Awesome. So I threw up a few random ones. Anchovies are absolutely not a requirement of mine. But to see it show that you can have preferences, traditions, and requirements that vary for different people. I much prefer a pesto sauce. I know the traditional is tomato and cheese. My requirement, I like cheese, so cheese on pizza is really good. But if I look at the definition from Merriam-Webster, a dish made typically of flattened bread dough, spread with a savory mixture. And I will spare you reading all the rest of it. Dictionary.com, thin layer of bread dough. Those are the two things that I highlight as a key element of pizza. That to me is what a pizza is. It may be a pita pizza or a like random flatbread wrap thing pizza, or a tortilla-based pizza. But to me, anything on bread is a pizza. Now, there's other words in there: savory, tomato, cheese. All of those pizza pieces, all of those elements, are also valid requirements when we talk about pizza. And so this is what I want you to think through as we're going into the preferences, traditions, and requirements. I'm going to pass out sticky notes. If you have pens, it does not matter what color sticky notes you're writing them on. Write down your preferences, traditions, and requirements about the league. One per sticky note. If it's an idea, it doesn't have to be a single word. It could be, a couple words. It's absolutely fine. Again, preference. I like this tradition. I've always done this. Requirement. I have to do this. I think about this in tax terms because I am scared of very little other than spiders in the IRS, because the idea of an audit is really terrifying, mostly from how much work that would call on my side.
So write one thing on each page.
Yeah, one thing on each one. So split them. So grab a few. You don't have to. You're not limited to one of each. Grab a few. I will give you a few minutes to do this.
Just a label for the representative.
Yeah, just put a note on it, and I will. So I'm going to put up some little lines along that side where you can come and put them when you're done. But I'll give about 5 minutes to do this, and then we can talk about what is seen. And I have extra random pens floating around if needful. Oh, do you? Yeah. Oh, pen. Okay.
One thing per sticky note.
Just one thing per sticky note, and then we'll collect them and see sort of what we see. I don't know the answer to this. The answer to this is what y'all decide, which is the scary thing. And if you need extra, I also have notebook paper. And you're welcome if you feel like you're done. There are 3 little pieces of paper. Just stick them in sort of columns underneath that. If you see ideas that you wrote down represented already, feel free to collect them sort of together. And if you get more ideas too, there are Post-its. Sure, too. They'll have
Do we go under special reservations? Oh.
Only 6 months of that.
It will be.
So when are they supposed to be?
I think we're targeted to be
Physical therapy.
I mean, best laid plans, I didn't wait for that roof over there to take 6 months, but it did, so.
So you're gonna give a tour on the 29th of February.
Oh, okay.
Preview. 5:05. Yeah, this place. I think it's open to the public. I got an invitation.
Might be.
But anyways, it's February 29th at 5:05, 5 to 7. It's just like, wine and cheese. I do a little reception, but they're gonna give us a sneak preview of that. Yeah.
Jenny was talking about pocket doors.
You'll have to ask Esther about that, Karen.
She wasn't there either, but. So who's the
I'm excited about
Becky that was leaving?
Yeah, they're more than I'm back for the simple things.
Well,
All right. Yeah, everyone
I'm.
able to participate?
These are the needs of
Awesome.
life. That's right.
This is actually really much more effective than putting them on a whiteboard because they actually stay when they're on the horizontal surface. Learn some lessons.
Come on, Murph.
He's still pretty guy. He's probably got a lot.
Yeah, you know.
Just feel like days, so much other stuff. I dropped some of those other things. I'm working on it.
Awesome. So again, I want to emphasize that this is for y'all. This is not something I'm taking back to national. This is literally, you get to decide what your league looks like, how your league functions. We have very few dictates that we set. Articles 1 through 3 in the bylaws. for example, cover nonpartisanship, for example, DEI policy adoption, things like that. But how your league operates, some leagues don't do studies. They don't like doing studies. That's fine. But they love doing advocacy based on what they have. That's also fine. They're willing to leverage studies from other organizations. So it's or from other leagues and to do concurrence as opposed to doing their own when they think it's close enough to what they're trying to achieve. So again, this is for y'all, not so much for me or for national, but to help y'all think through what do you want your league to be in the next year, in the next 5, 20, 100 years. And this is a process that you can keep iterating upon. And I really encourage that it not just be me facilitating it once and then done, but that you keep thinking about how do we want to be as an organization? How do we want to show up here? How do we want to work with each other, with external organizations, with the community at large? So with that, start talking preferences. So preference, nonpartisan, okay. Encouraging people to vote. Volunteerism, or volunteering. Gathering in activities with like-minded people. Institutional knowledge. Multi-generational. Speaker forums are open to the public. Communicating with leagues. Inclusive, equitable, good voter information. Participating in a good study. Interaction with league members. Strong voice, advocacy and lobbying in Washington. Inclusive outreach, involvement of all. Transparent, the public knows what LWV is doing. Are there any things that come up that surprise you in preferences? Yeah.
Nonpartisan should be a requirement.
I'm going to stop with the should.
Okay.
Preference, it's also, it's not that it should be or shouldn't be or things like that. I will say from the IRS and from the national perspective, yes, it's a requirement. But it is absolutely valid that it is also within preference. It's not that it is an either or, but your definition of nonpartisan may differ from someone else's definition of nonpartisan. We've actually seen that recently. Where people have said, well, there was an op-ed that was written by someone else, not from within the league, and it was published, and it was very much, the ethos of it was that it's very hard to be nonpartisan and a voting rights organization right now, when it is a very partisan issue. But the league is doing it, the league has been doing it, and the league is doing it well. Now, did not come across that from the title. It was a much more partisan op-ed title, and so there was a lot of discussion as to whether the League of Women Voters should have shared that story out, which we did. At the national office made that call to do so. So it's one of those things where that hit a lot of people's nonpartisanship, but it was fundamentally nonpartisan. And there's people who are going to agree and disagree on both sides of that. There was a very healthy discussion in the League of Women Voters New Media Group on Facebook, which I highly recommend you join. So.